Myself Sundar Ramakrishnan. Basically, this is the 110th part. Basically, here basically we were in last part. Basically, we were discussing about the database developer groups and the DBA groups. Basically, in career. Basically, this is related to the career. Basically, so here basically we are talking about the career of the DBA group. Basically, who just joins the DBA. Basically, so there basically stuff we have already discussed. Backup level, database level. Basically, if anything database level happens, then basically DBA groups basically takes the role. Then basically it's a performance tuning role. Performance tuning means by chance basically the process basically the system was basically working fine, but suddenly basically the system got slow basically. Then basically why the system got slow and why the system is getting slow, and basically system is not supposed to get slow. That type of task also basically performance tuning basically groups do. So basically if the for example performance tuning like the task is basically for example the one query is getting slow, then basically what is the why the query is getting low, you have to see the explain plan basically. But then basically there basically you can able to see view the entire explain plan basically how the basically database is taking basically, how the database is taking the data, how the tables are getting integrated, whether the indexing is there or not, and then basically which type of tables basically getting used. It's a virtual table, it's a real table, which type of table. So like this, basically the performance tuning stuff is also there basically. So like this also basically the post are there basically the performance tuning basically. If anybody feels that basically I am good in the query, and then basically I can solve the each and every queries, and then basically performance tuning also I can do, then basically he can jump into the performance tuning part basically. There also basically lots of basically big companies are there basically who basically are into the performance tuning project basically, because the performance tuner basically is also required because lots of data gets entered, and basically you can't say basically how basically the data system might get slow basically. But if the database system is designed very perfectly, then basically performance tuning basically performance tuning is basically almost required basically, because the data, if certain level exists, certain level of data is already entered, then basically the system gets slow basically. That is very, so basically whether the indexing has been getting used, if indexing has created, then basically it's the indexing is getting used or not. That also basically the status of the index basically that you need to check. Basically like this there are many stuff of the basically the performance tuner basically, many tasks are there of the performance tuner basically. So performance tuner is also one of the good post basically you can say, where basically the here basically the normal company never really required the performance tuner basically, because here the database level entry basically are very up to the normal level. But here basically the big level companies basically they required basically the performance tuner. So basically this post to be a performance tuner basically are only basically required, is basically only applied, this type of post basically only gets in the big software companies basically, where basically the database level are very high, and DBA also basically requires in big software companies also only basically. They're also basically because in big software companies only basically the big level data gets entered basically. So there basically the tuner basically is required. So one of the post you can say it's a tuner also basically. Performance tuning basically, you can say tuning of the database basically. You say how the database is getting slow, this type of stuff basically. So like this basically this was basically the data normal, the entry level post basically, that is basically development, junior development, then quality level work, then the project, each and every documentation side work, and the unit tester level work basically. And then basically there are many stuff basically tasks basically, performance tuning level stuff basically, the database level stuff. So like this basically each and every post we have already now basically related to the senior level post basically, that are basically a leading level side basically, the technical lead is there. Then basically the technical stuffs basically who can do the technical stuff. For example, in .NET basically there are basically big project basically that contains lots of tables, lots of framework is required there basically, the senior level stuff groups only can do that basically. So they basically prepare the base of the basically framework basically. For example, uh, they have prepared the base level framework. Like for example, just the developer just need to pass the few SQL statements, and then basically the automatically the data set basically gets into their form basically, whenever from where basically they are calling the data set basically, from where they are calling the database basically. So like this basically, if you just then basically they have to do little bit manipulation only. So here basically the main stuff is basically already done. That is basically fetching the data, passing the database, passing the data set, passing the data row. So this basically all the framework basically is designed by the technical lead, basically technical architect person basically. He has developed the framework basically in .NET. Like this basically the technical tasks basically is already done. So like this basically the developer basically who are basically starter and basically little bit experienced person basically can able to do rest of the task basically. So technical lead basically here plays the most important role also basically. Senior developer are there basically. So like this basically this is related to the technical side. Now basically related to the management side basically, that is basically project management, project directors basically, the CEOs of the companies and the vice presidents of the company basically. So here basically we will see going to see the project manager basically, how the project manager works, how the service software delivery head basically, software delivery manager basically works. So how they are going to do the task basically. Like that, for example, the one project came. So basically he is supposed to be responsible for the each and every specification basically. So each and every specification he has to prepare. He has to prepare each and every functional part basically. Then basically he has to allocate the stuff to the project developer side basically. So here basically in small software companies nowadays basically the WordPress developer are there. So they only do the project manager stuff also basically. Why? Because they're basically the database is not required, the front end designing is not required, everything basically it's there in that drag and drop basically. So there basically project manager nowadays is not required, but to handle the tough basically project, there basically the manager is required, because the developer can't handle up to this level man tough level task basically. So here basically we are talking about the manager side, that is basically big level project basically comes into the picture. So project manager also basically is required in basically big level private limited and the public limited and the same level 5 only company basically. Because in small company basically developer only becomes the project manager basically, like that basically. Because they only interacts with the client. So like this basically, because each and every stuff basically it's ready made basically. So you just need to, for example, if you want to create a fun form, so basically there is one ready made form tools only available. So you just need to drag and drop, just you need to set the few fields basically, that's all basically. And the data, when you submit the form, then the basically automatically data gets insert to the database, and there basically the database is also created. You don't now need to create any database like this. You just need to publish the website, and then basically it's automatically it's published. You just require the user ID and password of the web WordPress basically WordPress development tool basically. So like this basically, in small company basically manager level stuff basically are very less. It's basically equivalent to no basically we can say. But in big level company basically the the .NET projects are there. The WordPress project basically also have basically lots of customized coding basically. There basically lots of coding is required, lots of customized coding is required. PHP is there, and Python is there basically. Like this basically, Java projects are there. There basically project manager is required. Project managers are basically into the functional level part. So like this basically the delivery level head basically. Delivery head will basically is responsible for the delivery basically. The project should be delivered on time. That's all basically. So like this, very for that basically he need to do lots of plans basically. He need to check whether basically risk level plan he has prepared the risk level plan or not. Like this basically each and every risk level plan basically designs. So his stuff basically is to deliver the project, that's all basically. And to deliver the project only basically he need to handle the project manager, he need to handle the technical guys, he need to handle the developer also basically. So like this, basically each and every stuffs are there basically. So software delivery post is also not a very easy post. Basically, he need to handle each and every stuff basically because he will be responsible for if the project is not getting delivered on time basically. So project manager also will not be responsible. The delivery head basically is responsible for the project has to be complete on time. So for that, basically, he need to be technically little bit strong. The functional part also he should be strong. He should be able to communicate with the client on communication plan. The perfect communication plan should have he has to prepare. So like this, basically, lots of stuffs are there for the software delivery head also. Basically, we can say. So sometimes basically nowadays basically the agile methodology, the Scrum management system has already applied, where basically the client does not interact with the project manager, and sometimes basically not to the service delivery head also, software delivery head also. So there basically internal staff basically becomes the client basically. Like this basically product owner becomes the products owner basically become equal to client basically. Like this basically many roles are also there basically nowadays created. Like this basically if you are basically good into the delivery side one, then basically you can jump into the product owner side basically. So become the client. Like this basically you can jump into the scrum management system basically. Agile methodology is there basically. Nowadays the agile methodology, so there are many rules of the agile methodology: agile master, agile manager, agile like the scrum owner is there, scrum developer are there, scrum leader are there basically. So like this basically there are many rules basically in the Scrum management system also. And Waterflow basically it's a very old system basically. So big level projects basically are used here basically. The requirements basically which requires a lots of time basically. So the requirement is not going to change basically anytime basically. So like this basically water flow diagram basically can be used in like this the management level stuffs are done. Then basically few stuff basically are in for the vice president and CEO level stuff. For example, if I say that text box equal to thousand cities, well, then basically CEOs and vice president basically they can easily able to understand the what actually this thousand equal to so text box equal to created from the thousand cities because the whatever project basically we are doing each and every stuff basically which we are doing that is basically going to indirectly going to contribute to this text box equal to thousand cities only, combo box equal to thousand cities only. So basically combo box is created on the base of thousand cities. So it whatever task basically you are doing, whatever projects you are doing in the software industry, that all are basically going to by default going to contribute to this level, this all this all areas only basically. That is basically going to few project basically says that we are going to contribute to text box area. So text box area equal to thousand cities. So that thousand cities related to text box, there this project is going to be. There this project is going to contribute basically like this basically combo box contribution basically. So like this basically the CEO and vice president of the organization who are basically directly connected with the company's owner basically. They know basically where this project is going to be, whether this project is going to be contribute to the combo box, whether the project is going to contribute to the text box, whether the project is going to contribute to the checkbox, radio buttons are there, forms are there. Like this basically, forms basically has been created from more than thousand cities basically. So like this basically each and every basically process basically. And the basically if the software company is telling that we are going to generate the human needs, then basically the project manager, the CEO and vice president basically must know basically the project is basically going to generate the human needs basically. That is basically which human needs this project is going to be generated, whether it's a vegetable, um, whether it's a basically oil. So like this basically they can jump into the demand and supply of the product basically. For example, they are going to generate the vegetables, then basically they can the vice president and CEO basically they can, so they should be aware about the software industry, plus they should be aware about the sales of the each and every stuff. Like this basically vegetables, so he can jump into the vegetable demands basically, demands and supply. So like this basically he jumps into the retail sector, like this he jumps into corporate sector, like this each and every sales industry also he need to handle basically because he is a CEO and vice president. So CEO and vice president basically roles are basically very tough basically we can say. because they are responsible for the delivery of the project, and the project should be delivered perfectly. And they have to handle the software delivery head also, the manager also, the developer also, quality level department also. So basically, they have to handle each and every stuff basically. You can say. So they have to do up to this level plan basically. If the project is basically developed into Scrum management system, then basically they have to create the entire structure of the Scrum. Basically, you have to create the owner, you have to create the product owner, he is to create product Scrum developer, Scrum master, and basically lots of stuff basically are there. So basically that stuff is also not so easy. Basically, you can say. So like this basically. This is also a little bit about the career of the basically the software companies, and then basically the in next part basically we are going to see how basically the project how basically the company owner basically do the work basically.